Hello, Upper Dublin High School. This is Donna Ward for the Guidance Office. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am super excited to share our guest. Today we have Miss Katie Strong, admission representative from Quinnipiac University. Katie is here today. She's going to give us some insight and tips on the college admission process, talk specifically about essay writing, and I have some questions here to ask her as well. What you need to know about Katie is she not only is an admissions representative from Quinnipiac, but she also is a graduate. Katie earned her undergraduate degree at Quinnipiac, also her MBA, and was an All-American Star Scholar athlete at Quinnipiac. Katie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Donna. I have been at Quinnipiac now professionally for 4 years, and I also was a tour guide for my 4 years of undergrad. So almost 8 years altogether. So it's always a great opportunity to speak with students and their families about college admission and what this stressful process might look like. To give a brief overview of who Quinnipiac is and what we offer, I'll start out by sharing that we are a medium-sized suburban New England-style campus setting. We are located in Hamden, Connecticut, which is about 15 minutes outside the city of New Haven. So from Upper Dublin, that's about a 3 to 3.5 hour drive, depending on the traffic. We do offer over 60 undergraduate majors across our College of Arts and Sciences, as well as schools of business, communications, engineering, health sciences, and nursing. We also offer 33 graduate programs, including our own medical school and law school. Outside the classroom, we are described as a very balanced institution. We have 21 Division I athletic programs. We are excited to announce that we have started club sports, and we have always had a vibrant intramural program as well. We offer over 140 student clubs and organizations, and we are very much a residential institution with 96% of our first-year students living on campus with us.
Now, if students have additional questions about the campus or about programs, can they contact you directly?
Absolutely. I read all of the applications from Upper Dublin, so I'm always happy to connect with students. You can easily find my contact information on our website. If you just search admissions counselors, you'll find my picture, and my name's pretty easy to remember as well, so always happy to connect.
That's great. We appreciate that. Thank you. So I'm going to start with learning a little bit more about admissions and how admissions counselors from Quinnipiac specifically, but maybe if you can give a general sense as well of how admissions counselors review the essay. I know that's a big portion of the application, especially for colleges that look at admissions from more of a holistic process. Could you talk to us a little bit about suggestions and strategies when students write essays and what specifically you think is important to include?
Absolutely. I think that there's a lot of stress when it comes to writing a personal statement and a personal essay. And I think the biggest stress for students is trying to choose a topic and really focusing on something that's unique. I'll let you in on a little secret. There's probably not many unique topics out there anymore after admissions counselors are reading thousands of essays per year. And while we do say, avoid the cliche topics, winning the big game, getting an A in a class, it's not necessarily what you choose to write about, but how you write it. We already receive from many institutions look at from a holistic approach. We're getting your list of activities, your high school transcript, and letters of recommendation that are written from counselors and teachers about you. But this is really your opportunity to write something in your own voice and share that with us. So while I encourage students, if you want to expand on an activity or something that's already on your application, don't feel that you cannot do that. You absolutely can, but make sure that you're telling us something new about you. Rather than just describing your involvement, really give us an insight into your character, personality traits so that we are learning something new pretty much every paragraph that we are reading. And I want students to share something that they're passionate about. Parents, let them write about what they want to write about. That's always my encouragement. But really share something new about you and make us feel that we are experiencing that experience, event, thing, or person with you. You really want to draw in those emotions and really captivate an admissions counselor who's reading several thousand of these potentially, depending on the institution that they represent. I think right now there's a lot of eagerness for students to share their experience surrounding the COVID-19 situation and what they're experiencing with that. and the coalition application and common application have added additional optional sections for students to do that. So I encourage students to use the traditional personal essay section to share about themselves. And then if they feel that COVID-19 has impacted their life, their academic experience, outside situations, to use that additional information section to write about that in that section, because I think we're going to get a lot on COVID-19, and I want to make sure that you are representing yourself in a unique way.
That's really helpful information. I know I've had a lot of students and parents ask that specific question. Can we write about how COVID has affected us? And I think it's important for students and parents to keep in mind that the essay is the student's voice, and it's really important that they share their passion. What's different about them? What's their voice in the application? Write about what they think is important, and use the COVID experience in the additional section of the essay portion. You talked about what to write about. Any suggestions on what not to write about?
Yeah, the cliche topics out there are a lot about sports. I mean, I'm a former athlete, so that was a big part of my life, but we read a lot about athletics and winning the big game or getting cut from a team, and that can get repetitive. So I tell students, try to avoid that even if you think that your identity is an athlete. A lot of students also tend to reiterate information that's already available to us. They will tell us their GPA from freshman year, sophomore year, junior year, or they'll list out the activities and involvement that they have. And we already have that information. So I want students to expand on something or share something additional. If you feel that describing your academic experience is important to you and that you've had maybe a difference in grades from an increasing trend from freshman to junior year, there's a section for you to do that in additional information. It's not really where I would see students doing it in a personal essay for the most part. To be honest with you, my most memorable topics have been about shoes, a cell phone, nachos most recently. So really anything goes.
I can imagine you spend an awful lot of time reading essays. And please know we all appreciate the time that you spend on the applications. Next question. If you could, from an admission standpoint, tell us the most important pieces of an application that your team reviews in considering a student's candidacy. What are you looking at specifically for rising seniors, for students who are applying into the fall of 2021?
I think most colleagues across the board in higher education would say high school transcript weighs, the most for students when submitting their application. And for some institutions, that's really the only academic information that they're receiving from a student, especially as, moving towards a test optional policy for many institutions. So the high school transcript oftentimes has to stand on its own. For some colleges and universities out there, that's all they're looking at. From a more holistic approach, and Quinnipiac represents a holistic approach, as do many schools and universities out there, we are looking at much more than that. The transcript will play a part, and again, looking at trends or grades play a part, but not always the only thing that plays a part. We also look at the leveling of classes. If you're taking AP, IB, dual enrollment classes, honors classes, that's all going to play a part. We also can tell strengths and weaknesses from a transcript. So if you're particularly better in math than maybe a foreign language, we can get all of that. So that's why that plays a big part for a lot of admissions committees in reviewing a student. But I also encourage students to really spend time on their personal statement. Spend time on your list of activities. Make sure that doesn't have any spelling errors. This is all going to be a representation of who you are as a student. And we also read the letters of recommendation that gets sent on your behalf from your counselors as well as your teachers, just to get some more insight in maybe how other people view you. We really want to make sure that you're a fit, and this goes for everyone reviewing applications for our campus community. And how we do that is sometimes the other pieces of information. I think one thing to note with the current situation is demonstrated interest is used by some institutions. I think that will fall off a little bit because visits are going to be a little bit different, and it's not as easy to demonstrate interest these days. So that's going to play a part with everything going on.
I think what's also important for our students and parents to know is that When we submit a student's transcript as part of the application process, we also include the Upper Dublin High School profile, where we give grading information. We say how students are graded, what the scale is, percentages, statistics, standardized testing results. So we try to give an overview of what the high school is like to help you understand that transcript and all of the other pieces to the application. Katie, you talked about how applications might look a little bit different, or you talked about admissions and how it might look a little bit different this year with invested interest. Can you talk about standardized testing? That's really been a huge topic of conversation. Students are concerned that maybe they haven't taken the SAT or an ACT or a standardized test. They're concerned that they might not be able to take the test this fall. As you know, we don't really know what that's going to look like yet. Any kind of advice you have from an admission standpoint on if they can't take a test, how you as a counselor is going to review an application?
Absolutely. And I just want to say, first off, that we are living this with you. Admissions counselors are human, admissions committees are human. So we are going to be as accommodating as possible to students. So I know that many institutions, and Penn State being one of them, just announced going test optional, that there are so many options for students to not have to submit an SAT or ACT. There are a number of programs, and Quinnipiac still has a few programs that are requiring SAT or ACT scores, but we are working with students. We understand that there may need to be individual accommodations made for students not knowing what August, September, and October are going to bring. So I first want to say that no matter what school you're looking at, if they're requiring SAT or ACT scores for admission or potentially consideration for merit scholarships, for honors programs or other programs, to communicate with your admissions counselor from your area or their office to find out when August does roll around, if you haven't been able to sit for an SAT or ACT, that communication line should be open. When schools have gone to a test optional piece, I think it's happened very quickly over the past 5 years that this is happening, and this trend has kicked off much more for fall 2021. Some schools are doing it forever. Some schools are doing it for fall 2021. Other schools are running 3-year pilot programs. So meaning that you do not have to submit an SAT or ACT score for consideration, but understand that your academic transcript is really the only academic information that they are getting from you. So I do encourage students still to do their best to try and sit for an SAT or ACT if they have the opportunity. For schools that are test optional and you do not want to submit your scores, a lot of schools are now using what we call self-reporting, meaning that they will use exactly what you indicate on your Common Application Coalition app or other application. So just make sure you leave that section blank if you're not planning on submitting scores. But I do encourage you to research where averages fall for universities, connect with your admissions counselors if you're not sure where you fall in their range, if you have scores, but you're not sure if that would benefit you or not. From my perspective and where I work, students' SAT or ACT score would not negatively impact them in our process. If there's maybe a score that I would have probably suggested we wouldn't submit, I usually don't tend to pay too much attention to it. You can't read too much into it like you can with a high school transcript. So oftentimes it's not going to negatively impact a student unless you are looking at maybe some very selective institutions because they've given you that option to not submit an SAT or ACT.
Helpful. My next question kind of dives into some of the things that you've touched on. You talked about changes and expectations and what students can anticipate next year as they're rising into their senior year. Are there any other major changes from an admissions perspective with COVID happening that rising seniors should consider when applying to colleges this fall?
Yeah, I think the biggest impact for you all, and again, I'm not sitting in your seat right now, but I can guess that it has been the visit opportunities and researching schools and really being able to cut down your list so that your list come August and September would be what it would have been if you were to do this 2 years ago. So I think that many rising seniors will be pushing off applying early decision or early action to many institutions as they take more time to kind of develop a list that makes sense. I've always been a proponent of a smaller list is better. There's not a need to apply to 19 schools, although I see students doing it. So I think that that list may grow for some rising seniors just because you haven't had an opportunity to learn about these schools. Most of the time, spring, summer, and early fall is when we see these students visiting schools and doing research. So my recommendation for you all going through this process is do as much as you can online. Research the programs that they offer. A lot of institutions now are doing virtual information sessions, virtual interviews, virtual tours, webinars on different topics, virtual open houses to learn about academic programs and student life, to really get a sense of their institution. And that may help narrow down your list. And that way, when schools do start to open up middle of summer and into fall, that you have those opportunities. You're not probably going to have an opportunity to go to large scale open houses anymore or large scale information sessions. And I do expect that campus tours, because they're not going to have large information sessions with 250 people, are going to be booking up pretty quickly. So as you're narrowing down your list of schools, I would encourage students to check on registrations pretty quickly to make your plans for visiting. Quinnipiac's right now in the process of allowing students to come visit campus starting in a couple weeks. I think we're early on that train. Other schools have not moved to that model yet, but we are pretty limited in who can come and all of that. So definitely communicate with admissions offices and view their websites for sure.
That's great information. And what I very clearly hear from you, and I think all school counselors at Upper Dublin would say the same thing, is it's really important to be on your game in this process. Be aware, stay educated, communicate with school counselors, with admission representatives, so that you know what the expectations are, you know when the open houses are, you know what next steps are along the process. If we were in the building and wrapping up the school year, we all would be telling our juniors to make sure they are using Naviance, looking at their lists, narrowing down their lists. We're not in school. We're still saying those things, but the point I hear from you is making sure they're logging into virtual tours. And it sounds like in a couple weeks, some schools will be opening up that they can actually get their foot on the ground and take a walk around. But they have to be doing the registration sooner than later, because they might miss that opportunity if the students are maxed out and not everyone can be on the campus at the same time. Virtual tours, you talked about that. I've heard some interesting feedback from our students about virtual tours. Obviously, everyone wishes that we were in school or that we could visit campuses with our own two eyes and feet on the ground. What advice or suggestions do you have for students who are touring virtually? It's difficult for them to really get a good sense of what the campus is like, but from your perspective, what advice do you have for them as they sign up for these virtual tours?
Yeah, virtual tours are always an interesting thing, and I've been saying that not only the past few months, but the past several years. There's a lot of different softwares out there, and that's the first thing to understand, that a lot of us are using third-party companies to run these. So oftentimes you'll see the opportunity to go onto a website and do a 360 panoramic view of a virtual tour and see pictures of buildings and get a sense of layout of the institution, but not learn much more about them. So students are really active on social media. So the best way to get a sense of colleges and universities is to look at their YouTube, Instagram, other social media pages. They oftentimes are sharing what things are happening on campus or what has happened on campus, and pictures of athletic games or big events that they're having, or just a traditional day of sitting out on the quad and what that would look like. Even when you're going to go visit schools, they're not going to look the same. They're not going to have 200 people in a room for a large event that you're going to be able to go experience. Or at a basketball game, may not be able to have 5,000 people sitting in an arena, and you get to experience that school spirit. So we really want you to understand from a perspective that videos are probably better, and some virtual tours out there on YouTube may be better than the panoramic ones. For instance, Quinnipiac has a YouTube channel with day in the life videos. You can follow around an engineering student, see what it's like, videos of our large events, and then we do tours of each of our schools and colleges. And again, these aren't going to be hour-long pieces that you're used to, but they're going to be short clips, 5 to 10 minutes, just to get a glimpse of what that campus might be like. And again, that might help narrow down your list for when you are applying to schools.
I also think it's helpful to kind of circle back to your beginning introduction and knowledge of what the campus is like. Students actually connecting with the admissions counselors from our individual area, obviously you or any other school that they're interested in, and getting kind of that personal information, the personal touch of what your experience has been like, what your work has been like, but then you giving some statistics and data about what type of student and programs that are available is really helpful. So again, students can connect back with you after this and ask any additional follow-up questions. When it comes to the fall, and you know, obviously depending on where you're at that point in time, if students want to schedule an admissions visit with you, how do they go about doing that? How will they go about doing that?
Yeah, I think this fall is going to look a little bit differently. Normally, I'd be in the guidance office at Upper Dublin coming to see you all in September or October, but that's probably not going to be the case, and a lot of students and colleges are going to be meeting virtually. So a lot of information sessions will be happening virtually. I'm also available to meet with students one-on-one for an admissions meeting or admissions interview if they feel like they want to add additional information to their application. So I encourage students to look at what schools offer. There are student chats too. If you don't want to talk to me, but you want to talk to a current student, that's absolutely fine. And I think that's going to change the model of a traditional school visit and coming to Upper Dublin to see you all. But I think it could be in a good direction.
This is my last question. COVID has certainly been an unusual time for all of us. And I'm asking this question specifically with students listening in. What advice or suggestions do you have for the guidance office, for school counselors and teachers as they write letters of recommendations? What do you want to hear from us in regards to what's happened this past year with COVID?
I think it's important that we know if a student has faced any difficulty with changing over to virtual learning. I know that for each student individually, that process may look different. So if a student has outside circumstances impacting their ability to complete coursework or access technology, or maybe had accommodations that can't be served on a virtual learning scale or via a computer, that's shared with us, that shows that there may have been an impact on a student's transcript. And I encourage students to advocate for themselves as well on their behalf. I think that teachers specifically have learned new things about their students working on, you know, a virtual setting and maybe found out things that they didn't know about students. Maybe they picked up a new hobby. Maybe they're actually really good at technology and have helped you out during that process. So I think that may be worth sharing with an admissions committee. And the other thing that I've seen an increase in over the past year or so is a bullet style recommendation letter, actually, and it would share a few facts about the student. And those actually work really, really well. We read so many letters of recommendation and we want to know quickly about a student. So if you're comfortable, a bullet style recommendation letter is totally fine with us as well.
Well, that's very helpful. I will certainly pass all of that along to our staff and our counselors. We want to write the best letters possible for our students, and those suggestions are really important. Well, Katie, I really appreciate your time that you've spent with me, with us today in answering these questions. I look forward to seeing you again, seeing you back on Upper Dublin's campus. If for some reason we aren't able to see you this fall on our campus, I look forward to a virtual meeting with you and our students. Thank you so much for your time, and we hope to see you again.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.